Good evening and welcome to the special meeting budget study session, San Bruno City Council, June 9th, 2014. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Here.
Vice Mayor Medina.
Here.
Mayor Ruane.
Here. Item number 3 is public comment on items not on this agenda. It's the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Would anyone like to address the council on items not on this agenda? Okay. Item 4, conduct of business. We're going to conduct a study session to review the 2014-15 City Manager's recommended operating budget for general funds, special revenue funds, and enterprise funds. You're on.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We appreciate you gathering together with us again this year, as we've done, as we do every year, to do what I consider to be one of the most important policy-related activities that we undertake every year, and that is to prepare, review, and ultimately have you approve the annual budget, which envisions not only a financial expenditure plan, but a work program for the coming year. And as such, what you have in front of you is staff's recommended financial plan and work program, subject to your interests, your questions, your comments, and ultimately your guidance, your direction for what the coming year has in store for San Bruno. I appreciate the attendance of the large number of city staff here tonight, and simply identify that it is, I hope, hopefully an indication, not that they didn't have anything else to do, but an indication, yes, right, or there was free cookies, but an indication of the strong interest that staff puts forward and the aggressive work effort that goes in every year to producing this document and the strategic and operational thought that it represents. As you're going to hear tonight, and as I hope you have already seen from your initial review of the budget, we have a little bit of a change in direction, so that the story that you're going to hear tonight is a little bit different than the one that you've heard for the past several years. And we could not be more pleased that that is actually the case. That in fact, and without stealing Mr. O'Leary's thunder, we are presenting a budget to you tonight that has a much more stable and optimistic revenue and expenditure program than we have seen in the past many years here in this city. At the same time, it is precisely the effort, the diligence, and the strategic thought process of this City Council and of the staff that is guided by your policy to maintain a conservative, thoughtful budget development process, budget management process over these past many years that has allowed us actually to be in this situation where many of our colleagues continue to be just emerging and or still struggling with financial deficit and difficulty. So, and again, without speaking for Mr. O'Leary, who will doubtless caution you that the city should not consider itself totally out of the woods, or as if previous conservative, thoughtful budget policy is no longer necessary, we do present to you tonight a new picture that we feel, again, very optimistic about the future and the opportunities that are in front of us. So, without further ado, we have a presentation tonight, which if we just went straight through it, would last probably about 40 or 45 minutes. We encourage you to ask questions, though, at any point along the way. in order to clarify any issues or to highlight any topic areas that you would like us to consider. In addition, we are continuing to prepare for a second study session, which is now scheduled for Wednesday evening, 2 nights from now. And at that time, it is our intent to go into a little bit more detail about operational priorities, departmental activities, and departmental issues. We do plan to use a slightly different format than we've used in previous years, and to work hard to engage the council in a discussion to any level that you are interested and willing to participate. Any questions you have for us can be delivered either then or tonight. If you ask us tonight and we can't get you the answer right on the spot, we hope to be prepared to be able to integrate that into our presentation and our conversation on Wednesday night. So, looking back to the script, tonight's presentation is intended to focus on 2 primary topics. One is the financial picture, generally, a bigger picture overview of financial issues, and as a companion piece to that, given the budget's purpose and content, an overview of policy and priorities that are embedded in the budget. Again, Wednesday night we'll pick up with a little bit more specific and detailed information. So, this budget, we're proud again to present to you without restrictions or a specific list of expenditure reductions that were necessary in order to create a balanced budget. We have not used, except in a very limited manner, one-time funds, and we will specifically call that to your attention so that activities and expenses are balanced, so that funds are expected to be available going forward and are available to cover that are generated in this year in order to cover activities that for which expenditures are proposed. That is not to say that there aren't a number of line items contained within this budget where expenditures were reduced, because our philosophy in building this budget has continued to maintain, as I mentioned earlier, a conservative budgeting philosophy that said if the expenditure isn't necessary, or if the cost can be reduced, then we do that. Again, what's philosophically different this year is that the budget has not been built around a overriding principle of costs being reduced by some percentage amount or forced, irrespective of the work program priorities. So again, it's not to say that there aren't numbers of line items where costs were reduced, and similarly where in some cases expenditures might have need to be increased to adequately support the work program. Overall, a great part of this positive result that we're talking to you about tonight is because revenues in the general fund overall are up a total of 7%, which is, again, I can't remember when we had this kind of conversation to say revenues are up 7%. Expenditures, again, based on a very specific budget management protocol, expenditures are up by 5%, and as you'll hear a bit more about as we go forward, a large part of that 5% increase is due specifically to the single policy action that occurred earlier this year to provide salary and benefit changes for employees for the first time in approximately 6 to 7 years. As I said, many expenditure and service reductions remain in place. And this year, as we have on a very limited basis in previous years, we have proposed a moderate list of enhancements or supplemental expenditures that have not been previously included in the budget to address specific work program and community priorities and initiatives to address those priorities. In summary, the sort of the guiding areas of priority that each department was tasked with evaluating and incorporating into their budget, and again, you'll hear more about this on Wednesday evening, is addressing areas of, and let me back up and say, numbers of these priorities have emerged out of discussions with the City Council, and both individually and collectively, as well as staff's observation of areas of need that may have not received as much attention as they probably would have benefited from in previous years, and some of these are emerging priorities for a variety of reasons. In the area of community problem solving, we're looking at a variety of issues that I think the council would most specifically articulate as having to do with the way that the community looks and feels, and how does it contribute to how people feel about living here. Things from a programmatic perspective, areas of code enforcement, neighborhood improvement or neighborhood connections, and addressing a variety of basic issue areas where the community has been concerned or where those concerns are emerging. Kind of overlaps with things that people are concerned and interested about, things that people have come to us as interests or new program areas where citizens are requesting additional services. Economic development, this topic generally addresses the areas of downtown improvement and the implementation of our transit corridors plan, as well as those services that are necessary both to maintain a robust business environment, but to encourage additional business locations within our community. Technology and process improvements are really areas where we're talking about how can we continue to promote efficiency, how can we promote better connection and communication with citizens, how can we promote better availability of information and utilization of that information productively by citizens in the community. Last year we spent a fair amount of time with the City Council on a number of fairly significant forward-looking and also costly initiatives in the area of technology that we believe continue to be important, and which we would like both the opportunity to report to you about, as well as to continue to evolve those initiatives in order to not simply put us into the 21st century in terms of business practice, but again to promote the city's core business need, which is service efficiency for our customers. We build these initiatives and our understanding of the community's needs and interests on a variety of things that we are actually very proud of. So looking backwards for a moment to fiscal year 13-14, this list includes just a sampling of the over 200 initiatives or accomplishments that are identified in the budget, scattered among the various departments, but all addressing a variety of things that actually allowed the city to progress during the past year. key among the things that I think we should all be very proud of are the initiation and the coming very close now to the independent functioning of the San Bruno Community Foundation. This is a real opportunity for a companion organization to our city to be instrumental in realizing a grand vision of what San Bruno is able to become. In the development area, we have initiated processing of an application for what we hope will be the first project envisioning the concept of the transit corridors plan, taking a dilapidated location and bringing in a new mixed-use project that will not only resolve blight and code issues, but again, will be a vision of where San Bruno is headed and what it can become. Companion with that is the opening of the Caltrain station and completion of the grade separation project. I know we had the opportunity of a little celebration on May 10th along with Caltrain. However, sometimes I think we don't really pause long enough sometimes with so many things always on the plate to say, wait, look what this accomplished. Look what we now have, how far we've come, and what the vision of the City Council is now realizing for San Bruno. So anchored at one end of our downtown, it's a grade separation coming soon. Anchor on the other end of the downtown, our first mixed-use project. Backing up, 100 years. 100 years is a very long time, and we ought to be very proud, not only of what our forefathers on the City Council and among staff envisioned for this city, but where we're going. And we're taking a little bit of time to celebrate that this year. We've already initiated planning for some great events coming up, and we've had a couple of successful activities so far, but let's not lose sight of the fact that this is really truly an opportunity to say, wow, San Bruno is nothing like it used to be. It's built on the same foundation, the same basis, but look where we're going and look what we are poised to become. Again, I mentioned the technology improvements, and we're going to talk a little bit more tomorrow night in particular about some of the improvements that we've made already in our geographic information system, which, as we talked with you about last year, is it's a pretty significant and as I said, costly initiative to situate the city for the future. And then in the fire area, we're continuing to evolve our vision of what shared services is all about, and have provided initial steps towards situating this city where it really needs to be with respect to emergency preparedness, but growing and evolving our fire service delivery into the 21st century. Again, these are just a very, very, very small sampling of numbers of those items that I think we should be proud about, and that will set the foundation for not only this coming year, but where we're going beyond that. So I'm going to turn over to Jim O'Leary here for the middle part of our presentation, focusing on the numbers, and hopefully he won't lose you in the middle of that, because this is really actually very exciting news, and we were very proud to be able to deliver it to you tonight. Good.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for inviting me to share the presentation on the details of the financial condition of the city. I am reminded, though, of one of the quarterly budget presentations I made to the City Council in the course of the recession, when revenues were pretty adversely impacted. And at the end of the presentation, lightheartedly, Councilmember Ibarra said, "Isn't there anything as the finance director you can do to make these numbers look better?" So at the next quarterly report, we added color and we added enhancements to the PowerPoint presentation, reflecting the same crappy numbers, but they did look better. But I only bring that up because I am pleased, as the city manager indicated, that we really don't need any trickery or hues of color to make the numbers look better this year for 14-15. And this is really a trend that has come about over the last several years, actually, where there is a significant improvement to the financial condition of the city. And again, not to reiterate too much, but again, I think the position that the city is in today is a combination of a strong rebound of revenues and the city council and the city management's ability to really hold down expenditures over really a long period of time and to really focus on maintaining the expenditure level only at the level that was absolutely necessary. So from this slide, you can see for the city manager's recommended budget for 14-15, operating revenues are projected to be a little over $37 million, while operating expenditures are about $36.6 million, leaving an operating surplus for the base budget of nearly $800,000. Do want to put that in context of the last couple of years. In 2012-13, actually the difference, as not in the budget, but in the actual end of the year, there was actually a $2 million positive balance between revenues and expenses. That was in 12-13. We are projecting for 13-14 a very similar number to the 789. The 13-14 projection is $764,000. I might mention again, as the city manager said, comparing $2 million in 12-13 to what you've experienced last year and this year, the numbers seem, well, they're significantly lower. But keep in mind that you know, the miscellaneous employees or non-public safety. The last compensation increase was really in 2007. For public safety, it was 2009. And that's about just generally $500,000 that was, is the impact of those salary increases. So if you add something like that to the operating surplus, it does really get back more in the realm of that 12-13 year. So the 36,652,000 is $1.6 million more than last year for the budget. Comparing last year's budget to this year's expenditure budget, it's $1.6 million. 1.2 of that increase is again related to various aspects of employee services, compensation, retirement, health costs, overtime. 1.2 of the increase, and I only say that you look to that portion of the increase related to personal services. Throughout the organization for all other expenditures, the general fund is only up by $400,000. Again, significant effort was made going line item by line item in order to hold down controllable expenses. That was successfully done. The slide shows the various large categories of revenues comparing the 14-15 to 13-14. Looking budget to budget, you can see that that the tax revenue is up almost $2.5 million, much less as it relates to franchise and the other categories. Departmental revenues are up 40,000. So again, the significant increases in revenue in 14-15 is in the tax category. You can, looking at taxes, and we'll look at it in more detail, but business tax within the tax category is up $850,000. Property tax is up just under $800,000, and sales tax is up $300,000. Might just mention the use of money and property. You see a decrease there. That is explained. One of the things that we've talked about over many years, because interest earnings has always been a significant part of the city's general fund revenue picture, and the last, I think we've talked, and we all know in our personal lives, our personal savings accounts, the rate of return is dropped significantly from 10 years ago, or from even 8 years ago. The interest rates are down, but in fact, our interest earnings this year are projected to be up, in part while interest rates are still depressed. The City Council has significantly added to the city's revenues, or reserves, I'm sorry, which adds to our cash balances. And so when the calculation is done, our interest earnings is actually up. Looking at that particular line item for revenues, the cable revenue is down, looking budget to budget, but that is really only a budget comparison to the extent last year's budget included a 5% rate increase for cable rates that was not implemented. And if that rate increase had in fact been put in place, it would have positively affected the equity transfer. So that's why the equity transfer is down in that use and money line item. The next slide shows a stack of revenues, the major tax categories going back to 07, 08. I'm still colorblind, so it's drawn out for me here. So the bottom stack is on, well, going across and all of them. It's a uniform placement on each of the stacks. But just looking at 14-15, the bottom stack is property tax, and you can see property tax is estimated at $7.36 million. Wanted to just take you back to 10-11. If you go over to the 10-11, you see the amount is 5.54, which is almost like a $2 million increase in property tax over that period of time. I went back to 10-11 because that is a year prior to the redevelopment agency going away. And so if you look at 10-11, compared to 14-15, there's a $2 million increase. About half of that $2 million increase from 10-11 is the result of improved property values, of the assessed value going up in San Mateo County in general, in San Bruno specifically. But the other aspect of that is the redevelopment agency going away, and has been described to you as the boomerang property tax benefit that the general fund has received over that period of time. So a significant portion, again, half of the property tax increase over a 4-year period, is not the result of improved assessed values. The second stack from the bottom is sales tax. Again, 7.67%. If you go all the way back to around 2004, if you went back a couple of more years, the sales tax that the city was generating was close to $7 million. So you can look at the chart here for this period of time, and again, I mean, I'm not trying to dash anybody's, good picture, because again, it is a good picture. But the increase, is getting us back above only where we were 10 years ago. And I guess the other point that I would make about that, and again, it has to do just with the city's long-term financial health and the issue of transit corridors and other planning initiatives that the city has. If you look at the top 10 sales tax generators in the city, there's only one of those that wasn't here when I first came to the city 15 years ago. So again, one of the desires of the city from a revenue perspective is the recruiting and getting additional sales tax revenues, and not just relying on the business cycle of existing businesses. So clearly there's an increase, and things are looking good in sales tax. But just want to I just wanted to point out the longer term perspective. One thing that just looking at the 13-14 estimate for sales tax, the 6.98, that 6.98 is really decreased by that triple flip amount of $400,000 that was taken by the state out of our sales tax allocation. So if that hadn't happened on a one-time basis, the 6.98 would have actually been a little bit higher. The next band above that is TOT, the $2.5 million. You can see that we are in a 5-year period of increasing TOT, and that's really a result, again, of just the economic rebound and the San Mateo County and the regional economic activity and some of the business recruitment that the city has had at Bay Hill that has allowed a more vibrant business community and the use and the greater use of business travel. And then the top stack, the 8.29, is other taxes, which includes the business tax, which again, the council has been briefed on significant increases over the last several years in business tax. It includes the card room tax, and it also includes the vehicle license fee amounts. So that's the taxes. I'll pause for a second. Is there any questions that the council might have?
Could you just elaborate a little more on this boomerang? Because I understand that the state and the county got more, but we also got more of a return on redevelopment for redevelopment through the property tax. But
That is correct. Back under redevelopment law, there were pass-through amounts that were required to be paid. And I believe there were 13 taxing agencies within the city of San Bruno, which included the school district, the college district, the high school district, mosquito abatement, air quality control. Again, there were 13 taxing agencies. One of those was the city of San Bruno. And we would get, so we would all get our share of these pass-through funds. So it was essentially 20% of the total tax increment was pass-through monies, and the city would get its share of that 20%. With redevelopment, with the redevelopment agency going away, additional funds that were retained by the that used to be part of the redevelopment agency are now being distributed to all of those taxing agencies. So the amount the school district is getting has gone up significantly. The amount the county is getting has gone up significantly. At the same time, the city's 13% of that 20% has gone up significantly. And so we have identified that in a unique revenue account just for historic purposes of tracking. So we are able to tell you how much additional money we are getting in the general fund as a result of the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. Hope that helps. Why we have the term boomerang, I'm not exactly sure what the boomerang means, but yes.
Were you going to talk more about this, it being a double-edged sword?
Uh,
Or later?
I could,
or
or-
why don't you do it?
Oh, okay.
So what I'm encouraging the director to talk about is the fact that while this presents what looks like a great opportunity for the general fund, and he can elaborate, the overall, the net effect of the reduction of redevelopment is not even, it's negative for the city. Not only would we have overall received more property tax between the city and the redevelopment agency combined, had redevelopment continued, the tools of redevelopment and the dedicated purpose for which those property tax resources were segregated has been eliminated. So there are numbers of, this is a small positive that came to us out of the dissolution of redevelopment overall in terms both of revenues as well as productive blight elimination and economic development initiatives. The net effect of the dissolution of redevelopment has not been a positive one, it's been a negative one.
I mean, this isn't the forum right now, but I think it's ever since redevelopment was eliminated, at least I have the question as to how are we going to improve the city without redevelopment? I don't understand at this point. It took me almost 10 years to understand redevelopment. And I know that we were getting a bigger piece of the pie, property tax pie, to be used, tax increment and everything to be used in that redevelopment area. Now we don't. Now we're getting, we're getting more property tax dollar, but getting it put in our general fund, but we have no improvement fund.
Right.
We don't have anything
Right.
to say, okay, we're setting this aside. So I
Right.
think that's a later, that's, sooner than later, a discussion that we have to have as to how are we going to deal with these up and coming projects that we're looking forward to, and how are we going to pay our share, or how are we going to try and attract development the way we did with redevelopment.
Right. And what I wanted to do, just in conversation with the city manager, is to point out that, if you just focus on property tax in the general fund, there is a significant improvement, and we should be pleased about that. But again, I wanted to point out how much of it was because of the economy, but a portion of it is because of these boomerang funds. So property tax, that's helping the city's general fund. But if you, and I wanted to try to quantify it, and let me just very, very briefly quantify it by saying that I think if you looked at the city general fund and the redevelopment agency as a total, and the vision that the city had and the hopes for certain development and activities and so forth, I think your point is well taken. How do we accomplish that if it's still important and still valuable? A lot of work went into redevelopment agency, and a lot of planning and a lot of vision came out of the planning, but that's gone away. And but even looking at the general fund, while property tax is up, I looked, and our projection for this past year, not next year, but last year, 13-14, the general fund benefit from the boomerang funds was about $1,064,000. If you look at the pass-through money we were getting for redevelopment into the general fund was $316,000. That would have been our estimate for last year. And the personnel that we were, the personnel in the redevelopment agency, we had a partial police officer in the redevelopment agency. You look at various positions that were furthering the redevelopment goal that were placed into the redevelopment agency, and the allocations for city activities that were in the redevelopment agency, it was actually a total, our estimate for last year would have been $1.8 million. So even with the $1 million we're getting in boomerang funds, if you step back and look at the whole picture, we'd estimate last year that the general fund is really in deficit of close to $800,000 by the elimination of the redevelopment agency, and the vision for the redevelopment agency has little path to success or accomplishment as we sit here today. That's the financial reality.
We gotta work on that
Right.
next month.
Well, and you know, as it relates to sales tax and some of, I mean, and again, I mean, I don't intend to dampen, you know, what is really a good picture, but the other, I mean, another conversation had with the city manager is just the recognition that in 2007, the city council took a bold step to put on the ballot a tax measure for the sales tax addition for the sales tax. I mean, 7 years later, many of the programs and the vision the city council had in 2007 when they took that action, that need is still there. And you know, you know, it's just a reality that the picture is better for the general fund because of the economic recovery, but it may not get us to where the council desires over the long term. So, okay, enough preaching. Does that answer your question about the boomerang? I don't know, more than answer.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Your stuff has to sink in.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd be delighted to. So I think we finished the revenues. I wasn't going to mention anything more about the revenues. So on this slide here, and again. You can see the various categories, the general government administrative departments on the top line, and then each of the individual service departments going on down. You can see the difference between the amended budget 13-14, the estimated actual that we're projecting for 13, and then the 14-15 budget. Fire is sort of an anomaly of the different, of a bigger increase, and there is really three explanations for fire being unique in that chart. One is the addition of the administrative battalion chief that the council acted on a month or 6 weeks ago to add that position into the current year's budget. And so the full funding for next year has an increase. There are fairly significant increases in the fire department for equipment for both apparatus, both the first line and the reserve apparatus, additional significant equipment additions and replacements and upgrading. There is projected to be 3 fire recruits hired in the 14-15 year, and the complete outfitting of that personnel is part of the increase. And the third is, in fact, an increase of about $96,000 in fire overtime, just in order to budget for the amount of overtime for the fire operations. You know, that is with minimum staffing in the fire department, and the need to call back firefighters when there is injuries, workers' comp or otherwise. It's a challenge to properly budget for overtime. And so in order to reflect what we think the budget necessity is about a $96,000 increase for fire.
There is an additional piece of information that I would be remiss in not sharing with you, given this venue and information that is coming forward to you at your next council meeting on the 24th, in conjunction with, or on the same date as you approve this budget. This budget does not include an additional cost that will be proposed in the fire department to change the proportionate share of shared services costs that are borne by San Bruno and Millbrae in the relationship that we have. It's been going on now since 2006, that we have been sharing various personnel, most notably battalion chiefs who manage the day-to-day operation of the suppression functions of our department. Total cost of the proposed change in allocation for those shared personnel is a new cost to the city of San Bruno of $250,000 approximately. This is an item that has been under informal discussion for some period of time, and which is now being moved forward as a specific request by the city of Millbrae that we officially amend those shared services agreements between our two agencies. And again, my best initial assessment of the total new cost to the city of San Bruno would be approximately $250,000. So that number is not reflected in the numbers that you have in front of you tonight. It's a cost which we will have to look at carefully and to evaluate how does that affect the overall overall budget and the operation of the fire department.
Go back just for a second. Wanted to point out on this slide, and then tie it into the next slide that you're going to see. On the right hand at the bottom, you see the $1.6 million, which is the change between the amended budget and the proposed budget, $1.6 million increase. But wanted to just draw your attention back to the point of the city council and the city management closely monitoring the budget and holding down expenses wherever possible. If you look at the amended budget compared to the estimated actual, and you see there's $1 million increase in 13-14, and again, a significant part of that has to do with the salary increase that first affected. If you recall, the salary increase was effective January, in January 14. It was retroactive to January of 14, so it impacts half of the year. So there's an increase there. There's also an adjustment for this allocation that we were talking about that really is related to redevelopment and there's other reasons why the allocation is affected that I can go into, but those are the adjustments. So wanted to then compare that to the 2 years before that, where there was not the salary increase, and again, the city council was holding the line. As you look at 11-12, looking at the amended budget and actual, you can see that there's actually almost a $634,000 reduction, where the actual expenditures were $600,000 less than the budget. Again, that's budget management, and even in 12-13, you can see that there's $70,000 less than the budget. So only dollars that needed to be spent have in fact historically been spent in this organization. The next slide is just going back to 10-11, the change in personnel, and we singled out on the top line the general fund, obviously, which is the most of our conversation tonight is around the general fund. But you can see just the changes over a period of time in the general fund. We currently have really 170 budgeted positions in the general fund, 169.8. What you don't see, I wanted to go back a little further, just for, again, context for the council. If you go back to the years 2002, 2004, it was actually the city was doing a 2-year budget at that particular time. So it's the 2002-2004 budget. The number of general fund employees was 201.5. And even in 2007-8, just prior to the beginning of the recession, the number of general fund employees was 183. So we remain in the base budget at 169, significantly fewer than we were in 2002 or even in 2007. And if you go down to the bottom, looking at the total FTEs for all funds in 2002-04, the total was 272, and in 07-08, the total was 259. So compared to the current 243, it just shows the contraction and the expenditure reduction, the contraction in personnel that was really necessary in order to weather the recession.
Chair, just so I understand on the, just saw it. Thank you. That's why I couldn't find it. Crestmore Recovery. In our budget, that would be under the Glenview.
Right.
So when I see there and it says 3.80, this year's budget is allocating 6.25, and in last year's budget it was at 7.75. So how is that quantified when we look at that as far as the allocation and or how am I misreading that?
You said 6.25. Did you mean the 4.25? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, 3.80?
Yeah. And
So-
you're comparing it to what?
And I'm looking at the budget that has it at 6.25, if I'm looking at the graph correctly. We have 25 persons listed, employees, and I saw a 6.25 is, which that equated to, unless maybe I'm just reading it wrong.
Okay. You know, it would actually make sense to have Pac answer that rather than me
Why don't we do that?
filter.
We want to give her an opportunity. You can't sit up there and not.
So to answer your question, What you see in the page is also includes a lot of the administrative and full-time employees that are working currently for the city, regardless of whether there is a Questmore recovery process or not. What you see up there at the 3.8 and the 4.25 are specific employees that were added to address the recovery process. So, for example, in the chart within the budget, we say that the city manager dedicates about 50% of her time into the recovery. Her time is not allocated out of the general in the city manager's budget. What we do is we actually recover that cost through a reimbursement. The difference between the city manager and the 3.8 that you see up there are that the 3.8 really is just employees or positions that we needed to address the recovery process.
Okay, I think that's clear.
And fully assigned
Fully
to Glenview.
So those that are 100% allocated for this, and that's
At
where we get that number. And in
the
other staff
3.8,
where we're
yeah.
getting, they're already in the general fund at 50%, 10%, whatever it is, and we're getting those monies back, then that's not reflective in that number on the screen.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. You did very good.
Again, this is, so this is just another summary of personnel, and took the total of the general fund that was the top line on the preceding chart and broke it down by function. I had a couple of other numbers just to give the historic context. Thought it might be helpful to the council. You look at the police showing currently at 61.5. If you go back to 2002, 2004, the number of police personnel assigned was 70.
What year was that?
2002, 2004. Even in 07, 08, prior to the recession, the number was 66. The fire department is a little more uniform, but at 33 position, 33.2 now. In 02, 04, the total fire personnel was 36 in 2002-04, and the number in 07, 08 was 35. So again, looking at general fund expenditures, and I mean, that's the personnel summaries, the comments that I wanted to make, is looking at personnel, looking at expenditure fund, or general fund expenditures by category. Personnel services, if you look at the budget, and you are well aware that there are lists of line items of expenditures that go on and on and on. But there are bold headings that are summary of these many line items, and personnel services is one, and there's line items under that. Staff training and development is a second. There's professional services, and then supplies and equipment. These are the general categories. So for personnel services, the 14-15 budget is $27,170,000. There is an increase of $1.2 million in personnel services compared to the previous budget. That $1.2 million is made up of an increase in direct employee compensation of almost $600,000. And again, that is the increases that the council approved in the negotiations with the employees, and again, reminding the council that it had been quite a period of time where essentially that compensation was not increased. Our increase in employee retirement costs this year, the PERS rates increase in the general fund is $291,000. Our rates are going up for miscellaneous 1.1%, and 1.7 for public safety, which is really, over the last number of years, it's really not that bad of an increase this year as the PERS rates have gone up year to year. So the 291,000. Medical premium increase, the impact in the general fund is $307,000. Again, would like to remind the council that the negotiated settlement called for employees to be responsible for 25% of the medical increase, the premium increase, beginning in the most recent year. That is an item, greater employee share of medical costs is something that has been the subject of conversations with the employee groups really since about 2006. And this change is a significant element of the labor negotiations. So, and I mentioned the $96,000 increase in overtime for the fire department. So those are really, if you look globally in all the divisions and all the departments of the general fund, that is the personnel services change. The engine, frontline and reserve equipment replacement is $63,000. Utility costs included in those categories is increasing $54,400. We continue to at city facilities to increase the number of LED fixtures and lights, and increase the number of lights on motion sensors, things that we're attempting to do to, again, address utility costs, but the increase we're projecting for this next year is $54,400. The category, the overall category of intergovernmental is up by a total of the budget is 1.365. It's an increase of 206,000. Really the increase, biggest increase is animal control costs through San Mateo County. That's $63,100. Shared services, overtime, or there's an impact of $35,000. And then intergovernmental is increasing by $122,000, but that is really just moving to budget more appropriately from intergovernmental, or in intergovernmental, since it's paying costs to other governmental agencies. That was moved in the budget process from professional services account. So it's really not an increase, but it increases the intergovernmental.
Chair, just on that, because it's throughout the budget, you know, you can go police, and that's $41,000 more. So,
With the intergovernmental.
yes.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to understand, how is that, because there's sometimes modest, sometimes big changes in departments, and I know it's a reassessing, I guess, and then allocation, and I know it's just moving it around. There are additional increases, but I'm trying to understand, how is that determined to where we see a $41,000 in 1 year to allocation? So what drives that number that changes the numbers that we see from year to year in the budget?
You're citing $41,000 specifically for police as an increase in the police?
Yes. Did I do that right? Internal service allocations?
Okay,
Am I misunderstanding that, or?
well, I'm told that there's an increase of 41,000 in internal allocations. Is
Correct.
that-
I'm
oh,
sorry,
okay, I
that's
thought
what
we were talking about
and I-
intergovernmental. You're
Because, I mean, we're talking about various costs for facility maintenance, we're talking about insurances.
Okay,
So I guess I'm trying to understand, that seems like in a year a big jump
Okay,
to
okay.
reassess and reevaluate. So I'm trying to understand, how does that
Okay.
get done?
Okay.
Please.
Let me try and I'll get corrected on either side. But the internal allocations, again, is a charge, and the $3.33 million is costs that the general fund bears that really come from one of the internal service funds. The garage, building and maintenance, self-insurance, and what's the fourth internal? And technology. So that is the cost. So in its very simplest way is the garage, for instance. The garage salaries have gone up for the first time in years. And the police department has a significant number of vehicles in the garage. And so as the salaries go up in the garage, that cost is allocated out to every department that has vehicles, if it's in the enterprise accounts or in the general fund. And so as the costs for the garage go up, the allocation to the general fund, to the enterprise accounts, goes up simultaneously. And so I would believe that the $41,000 increase in the police department represents, again, probably the bulk of it is increase labor costs in those 4 internal service funds that needs to then get allocated out. And 3 years ago, part of the allocation formula was the redevelopment agency, and that's gone away. So the allocations have been affected by redevelopment going away. So does that, I mean.
Yeah, did you do all right? Yes. Okay, you're good then. Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, because it is, I mean, the internal allocations are costs of the redevelopment agency by one of the other funds from that the redevelopment agency has to pay to one of the other funds,
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
interfund transfers. So we've been talking about some of the specifics of the increase. I don't really know what to say about this slide. It's just to kind of, I mean, this slide shows general fund expenditures, obviously the bars beginning in 07-08. And beginning in that year, there's a theoretical or magical line that is just shown that if expenditures had gone up by 2.5% beginning in 07-08 and just happened to go up by 2.5%, you can see the bars, which are reality for the budget, how far below just a 2.5% increase it is. And I mean, we can, I mean, and even the 2.5 is kind of a low number. I don't know, the council from 6 or 7 years ago, there was a desire for some long-range years where we did long-range forecasting 4 or 5 years into the future. And in some of those forecasts, we were really projecting revenues to increase, expenditures to increase by 3% a year. But this slide is again just to show how constrained expenditures have been, because 2.5 over this period of time would be a pretty minimal increase. But you see, the 08-09 budget exceeded this theoretical 2.5, but every year after that, just how far below a simple 2.5 increase it would be. Any question? So we've been talking about really the base budget at this point, and I think the comments now the city manager's recommended budget includes some areas of enhancement, and I think we want to summarize those.
So again, just to summarize at a very high level, the budget, the base budget as proposed, currently maintains many of the expenditure reductions previously in place. And to the extent that it shows a growth in expenditures, that is at least largely explained by the salary and benefit increase that was previously approved by the City Council for the first time in many years. As we have in previous years, we've made an effort in this year's budget to differentiate between those costs that are necessary to maintain and continue delivery of all existing services. Some of those services cost more, so costs have gone up, but the basic service program remains the same as it is envisioned in what we call the base budget. As we have in previous years, we have considered and ultimately presented to the City Council some number of limited enhancements that we propose for your separate consideration, given the availability of resources as well as given the specifically identified needs within the community for new services. I mean, in this case, my purpose tonight is really just to, for the purposes of a full presentation, to briefly identify what those are, and then we will be spending a little bit more time on this in our presentation on Wednesday evening. There are in this budget a few new position increases. Jim O'Leary identified previously with some of his slides the extent to which growth in personnel has been very, very limited, and the current levels of city staff across all departments remains at a level which is somewhat to, in some departments, significantly below those levels that existed in the earlier part of the 2000s decade. So again, we have not attempted to come back to the City Council simply to say, well, we used to have X, Y, or Z position, and so we think we need another one of those or another two of those. We have attempted to target any requests that we make directly to areas of the service, of the city's service program, that we believe could be significantly benefited by some additional resource. And because we're a service business, that resource, our tool for delivery, is really staff. So in the personnel, and just to call your attention to the box in the upper right-hand corner of the slide, the total amount of the enhancements that are being proposed is $560,000. The net is just over $400,000, $433,000. That difference is that in some areas of the city's service, new revenues would be expected to be realized by new programs or activities. And so where possible, we have netted the total cost against the projected total cost against the projected anticipated revenues, new revenues. In the area of personnel, staff will be elaborating on and explaining the need for an additional police officer, an additional code enforcement or neighborhood services officer, a parks maintenance worker, and a recreation services coordinator. The first two in this list are primarily intended to provide a higher level of service to the community in the area of what's generally referred to code enforcement, but I prefer to refer to it as community quality of life. Identifying and initiating steps to resolve community deficiencies, community problems, community concerns that detract from the overall ambiance or quality of life, particularly within our neighborhoods, but throughout the community. Parks maintenance worker position is proposed to deal with an increasing volume of landscape maintenance activity throughout the community. Actually, not so much in parks per se, but with the additional services now being provided to median areas and other areas of the public landscape. This is an issue that's been under discussion through the city for a number of years, and as we move off of the maintenance establishment period for numbers of these newly landscaped areas, incrementally the activity level in that division has increased to the point where we believe it's prudent to seek an additional worker. There is a bundle of personnel changes that are recommended to better configure the way that we deliver recreation services. And again, I won't go into elaborate detail about that tonight. The net effect of that is one additional position, a recreation coordinator position. But there is the opportunity as a result of a vacancy or multiple vacancies in the department to reclassify existing positions at a lower level and to therefore reduce the costs of some of our existing approved positions while adding one more person to the overall headcount. And again, it's in recreation where the majority of the new anticipated revenue would occur through the delivery of through the development and delivery of new program services. Non-personnel enhancements include one-time costs associated with some needed improvements at our park facilities at Diamond 2 and 3, at Bel Air Field, and at Lions Field. Moving forward to the enterprise and other activities, we do have some additional non-general funded proposals, including personnel, an associate engineer to assist in the delivery of our aggressive water and wastewater utility infrastructure rebuild program, currently funded through ratepayer revenues and in progress. And again, to address neighborhood and community ambiance or community quality of life issues, we've been able to achieve some improvements, remembering to some number of years ago where we received regular, steady complaints about trash and other issues in the downtown that have been, I won't say totally resolved, but substantially improved with the addition of a half-time maintenance worker whose job it is to move about the community, and particularly the downtown, to address trash and other aesthetic management issues. Those of you on the City Council who were able to attend the tour at the Corporation Yard early last week may remember seeing that little trash debris collection area that actually included a couple of couches and a variety of other stuff that people have abandoned in the public right-of-way. Just as an example of the types of things that we deal with on a pretty regular basis and are looking for some additional support to be able to even increase our existing reasonably good but can always be improved level of monitoring and response to those types of issues. And then in the non-personnel area, we have some technology improvements, again, that we will talk a bit about with you tomorrow, on Wednesday. and the opportunity to improve by expansion of our existing program our rebates for water conservation. This program, as you know, is available through our membership agency, BASCWA, and one which has had quite a very positive utilization here in San Bruno. We're proud of that and would like to be able to expand the public's ability to take advantage of that program and rebate opportunity. Another area that I'm going to touch on again in a moment is our ongoing ability to maintain and to assure the ongoing capability of our public facilities to sustain housing the delivery of services that our community relies on. And while it may seem a little bit mundane, shall we say, those items that are listed on the list in front of you, carpet cleaning, pressure washing, window cleaning, these are activities that actually have been deferred now for a number of years and for which there is no ongoing, regular, routine program to maintain basic facility maintenance. We're looking to install that program and to be able to maintain it on a going forward basis. In the cable television area, an initiative that is proposed through the operating budget, and we will be talking with you again for some more important advancements under consideration when we bring forward the capital budget. Again, allowing us to keep up with technology and the emerging need for persons to be able to use their cable services anywhere, anytime on mobile devices requires an approximately $80,000 expenditure for licensing. So again, we will be spending a fair amount of time with you on Wednesday evening to go over these initiatives in more detail. And again, these are differentiated from our routine or base budget by a expansion of program or a delivery of new program that is not currently and previously situated in our operating budgets. Moving forward to a somewhat different topic, I wanted to remind the City Council, just again in terms of the big picture perspective, of what a truly outstanding, significant job we have done, especially if you look backwards just 2 to 3 years, when the city did not have identified reserves segregated for specific purposes and remained financially unable to make those commitments. This is the result of the policy that the City Council put into place approximately 9 months ago to identify specific areas that needed to be in a first round of consideration that needed to be funded with available resources in order to provide certainty that revenues would be available in a time of need in a variety of different need categories. Again, this is a tremendous result from where we were even a few years ago, and one which speaks strongly to the City Council's foresight and your commitment to prudent and conservative, thoughtful financial management. There are, however, as we talked to you about at the time that we established and funded these reserves, a couple of areas that I will just keep reminding you about until we have the ability to do even more, because I think that we do have a couple of areas where our ability to identify and to provide resources would allow us much more flexibility in critical areas of the city's service. And there's two primary areas. You may recall that we talked about a number of other reserve areas when we discussed this last year, but there are two that I would call to your attention, particularly based on recent experience and the need for us to continue to keep this at the front of the mind. The first is in the infrastructure area. We have a program now funded via ratepayer revenue, as I mentioned before, to replace, upgrade, and stabilize into the long-term future our water and wastewater utility infrastructure. But we have a variety of other types of infrastructure that are, I would say, rival in equal comparison in terms of importance, but do not have a dedicated revenue source. We recently, for example, discussed with the City Council an initiative to upgrade our streetlights throughout the city. But I have to remind you that there is a substantial area of the community that will not be upgraded because of an ongoing and continuing deficiency in our system that requires about a $3 million investment to fix, and that's the RO system that is present in at least a quarter of the neighborhoods throughout our community. So the area of non-enterprise infrastructure is an area. The second topic area in that category is, although the council is well aware that we have some dedicated revenue sources that fund pavement infrastructure improvements, and we dedicate on the order of about $800,000 per year to pavement, street improvement initiatives. In fact, as you'll be hearing soon in one of our upcoming reports about the recent update of our pavement management system reporting, that in fact the need far outstrips the available dedicated funding resources, and is a topic that if we're ever going to pull ahead of the curve and address, which you might even call blight on the physical bed of our streets, that we probably need to address that issue more directly head on, and probably with some dedication down the road of general fund resources. And then the second big picture topic area is one that we've talked about before and that we should be talking about continuously, is planning for the time when we need to replace city facilities. Facilities such as our recreation center, our library, even our senior center is now over 25 years old and is requiring increasing levels of maintenance, repair, and upgrade in order to keep that facility going. So we have a number of critical facilities, fire stations, city hall, recreation facilities that do need our attention. And lastly, for my comments tonight anyway, is the big picture financial considerations that, again, not to put a damper on our very good news, we do have a number of needs, some of which I've already touched on here, including the conversation that we had earlier about the continuing need to address the loss of redevelopment funds that have not yet been, are not intended to be made up in whole by the opportunity of the boomerang funds, as Mr. O'Leary discussed with you. You mentioned long-term facility maintenance and replacement. Just finished talking to you about the city's reserve policy. And then the need for, on a continuing basis, to provide a thoughtful, long-range financial plan and forecast. Jim is fond of saying, and I'm surprised he didn't say it tonight, that every day where you have financial good news is only one day closer to the time when another downturn occurs, with the economic environment being somewhat cyclical. You did say that. I don't know why you didn't.
I
You
haven't had
you
a
will
chance
only
yet.
want to
I
give
haven't had
good
a chance.
news.
You're kind of dominating thing here.
Now we don't have to replace.
And then lastly, jumping back to the top of this list, we do have an outstanding reimbursement due that goes to something that PAC discussed with you earlier, and that is the reimbursement, which we're continuing to take on a regular basis of funds expended by the city for activities in the Crestmore rebuild. There is one area, though, that has been particularly complicated, and that is reimbursement for time of your staff that is otherwise budgeted and paid for through the general fund and through the enterprise funds, but has been uniquely dedicated to the rebuilding and recovery effort. Those staff hours are reimbursable through the trust, and they now amount to a pretty substantial amount that has not yet been sought for reimbursement through the trust fund. So that may be an opportunity for us to consider a substantial amount of money and its deployment into some of these things that we've talked about that may need some additional attention.
Why is that an issue?
Why hasn't it been done?
Yeah, why not just do it?
Because frankly, it's an enormous amount of work to develop the background, the materials that are necessary in order to put together the credible reimbursement request, and the ongoing work activity associated just doing the regular reimbursements for vendors that have been paid out of pocket. This is not a net out-of-pocket expense or additional out-of-pocket expense to the city. It just hasn't risen to the level of priority that we've been able to dedicate the necessary time. I am told that we are very, very close, and we do look forward within the next several months to being able to get that done, looking backwards all the way back to the time of the disaster. It's not money that it's not a hole in the bucket, because it's costs that have been budgeted and are otherwise provided for, but which are able to be reimbursed via the trust. So we do look forward to being able to do that soon.
Are there any outstanding state reimbursements?
There are not, or at least I'm not aware that there are any. Those reimbursements have already been made. These would, we're not double dipping, these would go beyond the amounts that were reimbursed through the state, which is actually the formula for state reimbursements, as it turns out, not much, and primarily for the immediate post-disaster period of approximately 2 weeks. And as you know, this has now been going on for coming up 4 years, so there is no other source of funding for that kind of a recovery effort.
The reimbursement is at least anticipated or budgeted within the trust.
Yes.
It's just a matter of
It-
documenting it and applying for the reimbursement.
That's correct. So when we recently talked to the city council about the anticipated amount of the trust that's been earmarked or already encumbered for activities, that amount was included, yes.
Just wanted to go back for just 1 second on the reserves slide, just to point out that the numbers on this slide indicate our projection of the reserves as of June 2014. And again, to hopefully give the council further comfort as you look at the 14-15 budget and even program enhancements and whatnot, the current general fund reserve is $8 million. So we are anticipating that there will actually be an increase of $700,000 in the general fund reserve this year. And as of June 30th, it'll be at the 8.7 amount. And if you look at the target amounts for the first three, they will then be at the target amounts. The capital and one-time reserve at $5 million, still is somewhat below the upper range of the target.
If possible, I think would always be good to know how we got to those, how much money we've transferred into those reserves to get to those goal levels.
Okay.
In the last couple of years. That's a big statement as far as this
I think we
this
can.
recovery.
I think
we
we
can
can.
give you that.
You know, I mean, and again, what I guess was just obvious to me, stepping back in here, is, 3 years ago was really the actual financial recovery, and as I indicated, revenues exceeded expenditures for several years, and the council was consistent in their direction that surplus, if you call it, be added to the reserves, and that's really at the council direction of what's been done. But we can go back and account and demonstrate what those actions that the council directed us to take.
It's big round numbers.
Big numbers. They are big numbers. Just going to mention just a couple of things. We're winding up here. Is just as it relates to the enterprise accounts. You just look at 14-15 proposed budget. Revenues in the water fund, 13 million, expenditures 8 million. The difference is $5 million. That $5 million is fully intended to support capital projects. You're going to see the capital budget presented in the first couple of months of 14-15 after July 1st. So the $5 million is designated for capital. Same in wastewater, the addition of $7 million by council policy. That is for capital projects. Going on to the stormwater, just wanted to point out that on an operating basis, the budget presents a deficit of $23,000 in the wastewater or in the stormwater fund. Just point out again the constraint on stormwater revenues to change the fee level for stormwater requires voter action. So there is still a positive fund balance in stormwater, but just looking at an operating budget and as it's presented to you this year, there's a deficit of the $23,000. For cable, the difference again between revenues and expense, there's $824,000. Again, there's a substantial component viewed for next year that would be directed towards capital. But again, I would also point out that the fund balance, as the council well knows, is negative in the capital, in the cable fund. So that remains, an elusive but difficult challenge for the city council as far as the cable operations. So the final topic just wanted to talk about is the debt service obligations that are included in the general fund and other funds. There are really 5 financings that the city has. There's just really a small amount annually on a 7-year lease for fire apparatus, $38,000. There's the pension obligation bonds that, if you recall, the proper way to look at that was simply a refinancing of a debt obligation that would have been otherwise paid to PERS that you're seeing at a lower rate than PERS would have charged you. So that's really merely a refinancing. That is in no way a new debt obligation. All the way back to 2000, the certificates of participation for the police building. In wastewater, there was a refunding of the wastewater issuance that I think was done initially in 2002. There's the state revolving fund. This is actually a debt of the city of South San Francisco. The $1,035,000 is the city's obligation to pay a portion of that financing to the city of South San Francisco. And then there's the 2009 lease for cable for the commercial service lease. You see the total payment of $37,000 since 2009. We've actually been paying a debt service of $430,000 annually for this lease. The $37,000 is just the final payment that we're making on that 2009 lease, and that will in fact disappear. So compared to last year, there's actually a $430,000 savings in cable for debt service.
For all the new boxes?
It was for I think it was the cable boxes, that large purchase of cable boxes, I believe that's what it was.
See all digital transition.
Just one other point about about the debt service. The city just received a notice from Standard & Poor's. The finance department had been in contact with Standard & Poor's related to our credit rating, and the council might recall every time there's a financing done, Moody's and Standard & Poor's, at least, if not Fitch's also, actually does a rating of the particular debt obligation. But then there's periodic adjustments, and in 2011, totally beyond the control of the city, because of the economic environment in California, Standard & Poor's went through and lowered the credit rating of every agency in California, every city. I'm not sure they did it for every agency, but they lowered the credit rating for every city in California. That was done in 2011. And then in 2013, the city itself did financing, and the credit ratings responded. And actually, the city received at that issuance a rating of AA from Standard & Poor's, which was increased the city's rating. But just recently, Standard & Poor's contacted us. They automatically get a copy of our CAFR, our financial statements, and they review it. And they sent us, normally when they do a credit review, it involves a kind of a long phone conversation with the finance department and one of their analysts, and looking at our financial statement and attempting to interpret it. They've changed the format where now, rather than this long phone conversation, they send us an even longer questionnaire that we need to respond to, and the finance department did. And then that results in a shorter phone conversation. But the result, anyhow, of all of this is, upon their review of the city finances and the financial condition and the audit on their own, they have actually upgraded the city's credit rating from AA to AA+. Which is only, I wouldn't have said it other if we'd gone down. I would have kept my mouth shut. So you knew that was the case.
Well, you got there a long time.
I mean, again, this is, I mean, Standard & Poor's, the rating agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's, I think, can properly be looked at as another set of eyes looking at the operations of the city, the fiscal guidance that the city council provides, and I think, again, this is a testament to what the city council and what the city is doing. I didn't realize the city manager believes that there are very, very few cities who have gotten such an unsolicited rating increase in recent periods. So I think it's something that the council should be proud of. And again, I think it's a reflection of another analysis, review of the city's condition, and that's quite positive. So,
I'm going to jump in here and just reiterate and expand a little bit on what Jim said about this, that I am told by people in the industry that of 55 agencies that were recently evaluated with this independent go back and do another look by Standard & Poor's, a very small number, maybe 2 or 3, were actually upgraded. And again, that review could result in no action. It could result in a reduction, or it could result in an improvement. So that type of independent review leading to an improvement, and in our case at AA plus, is really just a hair away from the highest level of rating that can be achieved at AAA. So it's a very, very, very strong statement. And I just wanted to read to you from the analytical summary that that Standard & Poor's produced. It said, with the city's strong management and adopted multi-layered reserve policy, we expect it will maintain its very strong available general fund balances. We believe this will provide financial stability and further support the current rating. Therefore, we do not anticipate changing the rating within the 2-year outlook. And elsewhere in the report, they identified as one of the factors that led to this result strong management conditions with good financial management practices, indicating our view that practices exist in most areas that are satisfactory, strong debt and contingent liabilities profile, and a strong reserve program that results in a high level of reserves as compared to annual expenditures. So we'll end tonight's presentation with congratulations to the City Council for that terrific result. We're happy to take any questions or comments tonight, and we'll be back Wednesday.
Anything for staff at this time? And congratulations to staff also. Great job. This meeting is adjourned until tomorrow evening at the City Council meeting.